Hey there, YouTubers. We haven't done Spooky Ball in a while, so I'm going to do that and talk about Codesters a little bit. It's going to be a fairly short one because we're following on work already done. So it's short because I'm not going to repeat myself about everything. But here we are in my little Codesters account, and what I'm going to do is very similar to what we did last time, which is start with a cleaned up list of all the possible sprites that can be represented. That's called all sprites in this program. And this time I'm going to disable all the walls. Now what does that mean? In the last one, all the sprites would bounce around and we could get a more and more crowded vista, because if the birth rate exceeded the demise rate, then the overall population would tend to increase and the population would stay visible because the walls were bouncy. If I disable all the walls, and there are previous videos about the physics engine, if you look over here, it's not super complex, and that's to its advantage. We're not using codesters to make very complex artificial realities, which is what you could do with a more complex physics engine. We want to make simple realities. And one of them is we don't have bouncy walls. I disable all the walls. So now when I give a speed, which I was doing before, to each of my objects as they're created, kind of move them off from the center, because the center is where all the sprites originate, in the last one as well. And then they drift in some x, y speed. I set those separately using a bunch of settings. I don't want anything to stay stationary. So I eliminate 0 as an option, as a speed option. You're either going negative or positive, between 5 and -5. Absolute value 5, but no 0. Stay in the integers, that kind of thing. So I just give you a list of speeds to pick from. And so when I run this, you'll see how they emanate. This is called emanate. And they head off in whatever random direction at varying speeds and varying angles, all because of this choosing x and y speed at random. That accounts entirely for their speed and direction. That's all set right in there. So then what else is going on? Giving birth is going to happen a lot more often, because I've said choose from true, 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 false. So infrequently, but now and then, when we get false, we're going to do what's called garbage collect. And again, we're using the interval function to repeatedly call every half second the cycle function. In other words, the stage comes with something called event interval, which we're free to make use of. And I've decided every half second, please run the cycle routine. And usually that means give birth to a sprite and set it going off in some direction. But every so often, garbage collect will go through and look at all the sprites we have. And that's part of what goes on in this, is that we keep all our sprites in a list called population. The last version did this as well. So we're appending sprites when we give birth. And when we garbage collect, we're going through all the sprites we have, and we're removing all of those that are basically going off camera. In other words, we don't want a whole universe of sprites piling up that we're not even able to see, and yet they're somehow taking our time to be tracked, right? They're off camera, they're way up in the hinterlands. We should just delete those. So if they're X or Y position, absolute value of, forget about positive or negative, if it's more than 350 in any direction, get rid of it, remove it. And to really be sure that this was working, I have again what you might call a log file. And this keeps track of how many total sprites we have in our global population list. And it should always stay really not too big a number. It does go double digits, but I've never seen it get up to even 20, right? It's between 10 and 20 is pretty, and that seems a little high to me, but it's what I see. So that's our interesting program for this evening. I hope that you're impressed that Codesters gives you a good platform for doing lots of interesting experiments. You just need to bring your imagination to the table. Bring it as an ingredient and just do versions like this. In other words, once you get something working, that's a nice branch point. You might want to build different projects in different directions from that. So instead of always making your code more and more elaborate, think about leaving it behind and copying it forward and elaborating in the copy. That way you'll have this starting point or checkpoint to fall back on. I've kind of been taking that approach. I hope you've found that instructive, and we'll talk to you soon.